In this video, we're talking about how to secure a TEDx talk. You may or may not know my story, but I applied to be a speaker at TEDx Minneapolis about a year and a half ago. I got a call back and it was very exciting. I'd only applied a couple other times in the past and thought, oh my gosh, this is so great. And I'm originally from Minneapolis. So I was thinking, oh, this is meant to be, and all the things. Well, I had a great connection call, an interview with the woman, Megan was her name, who interviewed me. And then after that interview, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Maybe I'm going to get it, and all the things that you would think about. Well, on a Sunday afternoon, I got the dreaded email that I didn't make the cut. They had selected 17 people, and from there, they were choosing around 6 people, something like that. Anyway, I didn't make it. And not going to lie, I definitely grieved that day. I was very sad, very down about that. But then I picked myself up in the evening and I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to be in Minneapolis this week. I had such a great connection with Megan, who interviewed me. And it turns out she and I lived a few blocks away from each other growing up. And she used to actually deliver the paper to my mom when she had a paper route as a kid. And there was so much serendipity. I thought, you know what? I wonder if she would be willing to have coffee with me or something. So I reached out to her and she said yes. And mind you, this was not my ploy or plea to go and try to convince her something. I mean, no way. I was way past that. I had sent her an email and I said, I am so sorry about this. And this must be really challenging for you to have to deliver this hard news to people. Especially she was so vested in me and really rallying to have me be one of the speakers. But it wasn't a fit. So there you have it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But here's what I want to tell you. That coffee date led to me becoming a speaker coach for TEDx Minneapolis. And I also want to tell you that that was because I asked if they needed volunteers for anything, frankly. And I even said for the day of the event. And then from there, she said, well, you would really be a great fit to be a speaker coach, but I can't make that decision. I'm going to introduce you to the head speaker coach. And eventually I met him. It took a while. And then I had to assess some talks, and I had a number of things that I needed to do to be, well, basically to be selected. And then I was. And that was such an amazing experience. And I'm still a TEDx coach for Minneapolis. Now, what I want to share with you is that the coolest part of that whole experience, well, there was a lot of cool things, but I was nominated to be one of the MCs of the event. So it was this whole cool experience that happened in how it all came together. So serendipity, ask for what you want. You never know what can happen. Show up, trust your gut. There's a lot of amazing lessons in there. But as a result of being involved, and now having just come back, whenever you're going to watch this or whenever this podcast goes live, I'm not exactly sure, but right now I'm recording this in May of 2024. And I just got back from a weekend in Chicago with the TEDx Chicago and surrounding suburbs teams, having an organizer's event to make TEDx the best experience possible for people, and learn how to curate speakers as well as be the best speaker coach I can be. Pretty much anything you could imagine related to organizing the event. And I've been wanting to record this podcast anyway, but after this experience, I thought this is a really good time to do it. So how do you actually get a TEDx talk? Let's talk about that. The first thing I want to say is you have to have an idea. And it has to be something that is unique, truly worth spreading. So first things first, the idea above all else is the most important thing. Is it unique? How is it going to help the world? How will it impact more lives than just one or a few? But how is it truly an idea worth spreading? And part of the problem is a lot of people, and this is another component here, is, and I technically have 5. I like to at least give quantifiable things. So let me run through those and then we'll talk about them. The first one, as I said, is you have to have an idea. And the second one, which might surprise you, is be a good human. So many times, this sounds so silly perhaps, but there are so many people out there, and this is my third, is we need to focus on service, not expanding your platform. This is about having a great idea that is going to help the world, that's going to be relevant and widely accessible, and be something that's going to make a difference in the world, not just something to advance your platform or your mission. Now, the part that I want to say about being a good human is that it really is remarkable. And having been with a lot of organizers recently and people that have been involved in TEDx for 15 plus years, I continue to hear how many people are just trying to, like, basically they're speakers or people who are trying to advance their platform or their brand and focused more on that than being focused on the actual idea that's unique and helpful. So once again, number 1, have an idea. Number 2, be a good human. Number 3 is focus on service, not advancing your platform. And then number 4, I touched on this already, but make it relevant, inclusive, and widely accessible. Relevant, inclusive, and widely accessible. It has to be things that people can relate to and go, "Oh my gosh, yes, that's so interesting," or "I hadn't thought about that before." And then number 5, be clear and concise. Kind of goes without saying, but making sure that your idea can be stated very simply, not in this complex way that people don't understand. It has to be clear and concise. And what I mean in part by that also is having it very plain spoken. So let's go back. First of all, the idea. I know it sounds pretty straightforward. Of well, duh, of course, that's exactly what TEDx is all about, or TED in general. And I think what happens is a lot of people have an idea that is maybe something that they think is amazing because it relates to them, but they're not always thinking about it related to the whole thing. How is this idea going to benefit the world, the economy, the people at large, and really focusing on why that even matters? So, whatever idea you might have, think, why does this matter to the world? Secondly, about being a good human, the thing that I continue to learn and see by being involved in TEDx is how amazing people are. It's all volunteer. I'm not sure if you know that. Even being a speaker, you don't get paid to do it. I don't get paid to be a speaker coach. It is all volunteer. Being a good human is so important to be the essence of the TEDx community and again, TED in general. When I say TEDx and TED, I'm really talking about them as the same thing. Now, one thing that is important to keep in mind is that TEDx events are all independently run and organized. They all have to answer to Big TED, as we call it, but that can be a great thing. It can also be a challenging thing when you're trying to get an idea to become a talk because due to the fact that they are all independently run, it is sometimes hard to know what city is having an event. There's not necessarily one website where all of them are. And if there is, it would depend on the person organizing that particular TEDx event to make sure that their event is listed there. So that is something that some people have found challenging of how do I even find where the TEDx or TED Talks are happening? And then how do I find out when their application deadline is? And a lot of people and and keep in mind, everybody's, I don't want to say just a person like it's less than, but we're all people running these things. And people are human, and with humans comes errors, and especially if there are volunteers, sometimes things aren't kept up. Now it depends. I don't want to, please hear me, anybody listening to this. I'm not trying to bash anybody that's involved in TEDx because I am too. But I just want to say that there are some that are more organized than others. So sometimes the information is easier to find than others. So if this is an idea that you really want to get out in the world, you have to do some research. You've got to do some legwork. The other thing that's really important, and this is all under the umbrella of being a good human, is go to some of these events, experience what they're like, get a feel of what was it that resonated with you, what ideas were there, get a sense of how the whole event was curated. And you'll notice that it's not just people speaking, but it is people, or excuse me, there's performers as well. There's some type of typically arts, there's often an interactive experience. It all runs the gamut based on the people organizing it in the particular city or town. So you will notice, if you haven't already, that anybody involved in TED or TEDx is incredibly service oriented and very much a learner, very curious. And when you can be in that camp as well, it will make for a much better experience. I have seen some cases where the people that get selected have a great idea and yet aren't always the greatest humans. I've seen this sometimes, or maybe they're just not behaving as great humans. And it's really challenging. It's annoying to work with people that are entitled or think that they're better than and don't have to fall what do you don't have to play by the rules like everybody else. And I know that that can be challenging with people's schedules and that kind of thing, but it is fascinating when you experience someone who doesn't see it as an honor, but they're really seeing it more of, oh, yeah, of course I got it. And it's all about me and my platform and all of that. So make sure that you are a good human. The other thing around number 3, focusing on service and not really focusing on your platform. This one is so important. How is your idea going to serve the world? And connected with this is the relevance, inclusivity, making it accessible and relatable to others. This, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is so in a line with how I coach people in general in my business, specifically knowing your audience and why would this matter to them? Too often what we do is we get fixated on ourselves and our idea or ideas, and we forget that there's a person or people receiving this information. And that's where you have to determine, okay, what is the best way for me to describe this idea in a way that someone else is going to go, oh my gosh, that's wonderful, or yeah, that is so different, that is so cool, and that is going to help us in so many different ways. So this one is really key. Why is it relevant, and why is it relevant now? So this is another big lesson that I learned, is being really aware of what is going on in the world right now that would make this such an important thing to bring up. The more relevant it is, the more attention it's going to get automatically. This is in part why a lot of talks around AI are so popular right now, because it is a big thing that is happening in the world. So that's another thing that we've got to get out of our mindset, or we've got to get beyond our world and the immediate place that we live in, and expand our thinking beyond what it is that other people are doing in the world and why your idea would matter to them. Being accessible is super important too, really making sure that, is this something that most people can grasp and understand? So I will talk about simplicity along with this one as well. Is the idea, are you saying it in a plain spoken fashion, or is it in technical jargon, or in general just too many fancy words for people to grasp? Because if it takes too many calories for us to have to burn to figure out what the idea is, then it's not going to be a very good one. If you're looking for more genuine connection and community in your life, I invite you to come to a call that's free on June 28th from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific, or 11 to 12 Eastern. 8 to 9 Pacific, 11 to 12 Eastern. It is a wonderful group of women that come together to talk about what are the barriers that get in the way of asking for what we want. And it's an opportunity to ask the community what you need. And it has been such an incredible group of women. And if you want to connect, have more real conversations, have a community to lean on, I invite you. I'm going to start doing these every month. I've been doing them since April 2024, and the next one is June 28th. So I'd love to see you there. And in line with that, number 5 is really to be clear and concise. Most places, and I've applied to a handful, and they've all had a little bit different requirements. So that's the other thing. If, and this is good rule of thumb in general, if some application on anything or an interview or whatever says, keep something to X amount of pages or to a minute or whatever, let's go with a video since most TEDx places are requiring a video and then some written documentation. But when there's a limit on certain things, word count or whatever, make sure that you stay within the limit. This may sound so common sense, but you've got to follow instructions, because if you don't, it's going to look like you're going rogue, or you didn't care, or you didn't pay attention, or you just wanted to hear yourself talk. If they're asking for a minute video, I would even suggest making it a little bit shorter if you can, so that you stay under. And then if they ask for example, 3 sentences or 1 sentence, explain your idea in 3 sentences. Don't have a bunch of commas and things that would elongate the sentence with lots of ands and because of and blah 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 just to make it longer. You truly should be able to say your idea in a matter of a very brief amount of time. So if we think about it in, if let's just say you had an Uber driver that you needed to explain your idea to. This is the same as delivering an elevator pitch. How do you do it in a way that's short and concise? And then the other thing to keep in mind, this is also really good advice for anybody interviewing, is to make sure to keep them wanting more. Don't say so much that it's overwhelming and way too detailed, but say enough that is almost like a teaser that makes somebody want to lean in and hear more and say, I want to learn more about that. And that will get you more attention for sure. The other thing in this whole thing is making sure that you come across in a way that is likable and engaging. When you deliver your video, it's really important to come across in a way that's interesting and likable. I know I just said that already, but I'm going to say it again. It is so critical to show that you're an interesting person, that you've got vocal variety, that you've got a smile on your face. Of course, you want to make sure that your expression is relevant to whatever it is that you're talking about, but you can still, even if it's a serious topic, you can say it in a light manner with your facial expression, for example. And when we do that, and when we are our conversational self, that's another one I cannot emphasize enough, our conversational self, that is an absolutely huge component as well. Having really strong delivery. So I'm going to add this one here. Likability is number 6. I'm doing this as we go, folks. And making sure that you deliver in a way that is warm and conversational. Because when we have that conversational tone, and the opposite of that, by the way, is in presenter mode. And now I'm talking about this marvelous idea that I'm going to tell you about. You'd go, wait, what? That's not how I normally talk. So the goal when you do your video is talk like you're normally talking. And if you need help with any of this, I would be happy to talk about whether it makes sense for us to work together. I coach people on TEDx Talks. I also coach people on the whole process. Now, I want to share a few other stories as we talk a little bit more about this, because I have learned such a tremendous amount. And a lot of times, what happens when we don't go to an event and we don't understand what TEDx is all about, and we're just looking at talks online. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking at talks online. I do that too. But going to the event is going to give you a sense of the whole experience, because it is not just about you doing a talk somewhere. This is about potentially 6 to 8 plus other people that are giving talks, and it's being particularly curated so that there's this experience that the audience is going to have, not just with the talks, but also with the art or the performers or whatever is happening. This is all about community. In addition to being a good human, really being of service related to the community is a huge part of what TED is all about. So that is so important to keep in mind. And one of the things that I'm going to quote one of the most amazing people that was at this recent event where I was related to TEDx organizers. He said there are transactional speakers and there are transformative speakers. I'll say that again. There are transactional speakers and there are transformative speakers. And you can tell the difference. Those transactional ones are usually the ones that are trying to just advance their platform. They're the ones who are usually the people that are speakers and want to get better, have more exposure so people can see them speaking. The best in general, the best ideas come from that person that might be sitting in the corner of the room, or the one maybe who doesn't speak up that often and raises her hand and says, I have this idea. It might be kind of crazy. And yes, let's hear the crazy ideas. And that is often where the best ideas come. Now, the other thing to keep in mind, there are a lot of guidelines and a lot of, obviously, that I've told you already, but at the end of the day, it comes down to whether you're a fit for whatever that particular TEDx is trying to accomplish. Notice I got a call back. The person, the curator in particular that was going through the talks, she clearly really resonated. Like, my idea resonated with her. But at the end of the day, when they put it in front of the whole committee, it wasn't the best fit. It's not that they didn't think my idea was good or that I wasn't likable, but it wasn't the right fit for that particular event. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You might have an amazing idea, but it's not the right fit for that particular event. So don't give up. I want to encourage you to keep applying, keep putting yourself out there. And you'll also find that you may hone your idea even more. I'm going to tell you something very humbling because let me just tell you what it was. So I remember the head speaker coach last year. He obviously knew that I had applied to be a speaker and did not get in. And he said something like, I'm so glad that you're here. I love your coaching. It's going to be great. And blah, blah, blah. He was very complimentary. And then he said something like, so maybe if you decide to apply again, you'll learn something here with us and make it an even better idea. And my first reaction to him, which I did not say out loud, but inside my head, I thought, well, what possibly could be better than the idea that I already have? That is my idea. I think it's a great one. And I was really arrogant and I'm laughing. I'm so glad nobody heard me say that out loud. But I remember thinking that, no, that's not going to be possible at the time. Well, now that I've been involved for a while, I will tell you that when I applied to a different TEDx this year, I did change the idea. It was still the same general idea, but I changed the way I positioned it. And it made a difference because I thought, now I get it. This is not TED or TEDx is not necessarily looking for here's the 3-step formula, or here's my framework on this, or like a teaching. And I know it can be hard sometimes to determine, well, what do you mean by that compared to what would actually be selected? And again, every organizer is a little bit different, which makes it challenging. But this is really about this idea, not a framework or a 5-step program or something like that. This is, what is the idea? And here's the cool thing. You've got every TEDx event has speaker coaches, somebody that's helping you. So they're going to help you on both the content as well as the delivery. The great thing is they can help you take this idea and formulate it into what will make it an incredible TEDx talk. I would caution you from thinking in advance, like, for example, let's say you are a speaker and you do have a great idea. If you come in with, here's my keynote on the 5 steps to whatever, that's not going to be something that most people will take. It's just not going to be that attractive. It'll be much more attractive with, here's this idea. I don't know exactly how to formulate it, but this is, well, I mean, obviously, you want to know how to formulate it. But basically what I'm saying is you're going to have coaches to help you structure the message And so if you are not a speaker, if you are not a trainer, if you're not a facilitator, don't worry about it. Sometimes it's even better that you're not because you don't have any preconceived notion of what it takes to organize a talk. And TED is very different. And I will tell you from experience, it is very different than any other way that I've coached before because there are a lot of specific guidelines. There's a particular way that TED likes it and simple things that I won't get into now. But it's really interesting because it is a lot different. And that is another thing I'll say too with my experience. What was interesting when I was the MC in Minneapolis, that we actually allowed the audience, and we told them this in advance. Again, a community feel. Hey, everybody, we're so excited that you're here and helping with the speakers to get the best recorded talk. That was the goal for the end goal of the event, for the speakers to have a great talk to be able to upload to YouTube, which meant that they could do their talk over again if they wanted to. And a lot of TEDx events allow their speakers to do that because they're wanting to get the best version of the talk on YouTube. Of course, it's about the actual event that's happening and the whole experience and everything. But a lot of it is behind the scenes so that we can all support the speakers from having or we can support them in having the best talks possible that would be recorded and be able to put up online. So lots of different things. I know some of this may sound a little bit random, but at the end of the day, let me go back and review here. Number 1, have an idea. Number 2, be a good human. Number 3, focus on service, not advancing your platform. Number 4, make it relevant, inclusive, and accessible to people as well as relatable. And number 5, be clear and concise in your audition in particular. And then number 6, be likable. And then number 7, deliver your message in that video when you're applying in a conversational tone. So those are some of the things that I have learned over the past couple of years now being involved. And I am very excited to hear how these tips helped you and would love to learn more about what you have learned in the application process or anything that you want to share or ask about being involved in a TEDx event. So again, get out there, be a part of the events so you get a feel of them even more and come from that place of service so that you can really think about this as helping the whole world, not just helping you. And I believe that when you come from that place, you are going to have a lot more success than coming from a place of that more selfish ambition, which I also understand. I want to say that. I get it. I want to build my platform too. And yet, when we can come from that other place, I do think a lot more amazing things happen and we get a lot more out of it as well. Many women hold back due to self-doubt, people pleasing, not wanting to rock the boat, fear of being judged, not wanting to say anything that would make them unpopular. There's so many different reasons why we hold back. And this is a problem. I did it far too long, and I don't want anybody to be held back from being their true and authentic self because we're missing opportunities and we leave money on the table. And if you relate to any of this, I would love to talk to you to see if it's a fit for you to join the Powerhouse. It is my mastermind community that helps women get promoted, move to that next level in their career in general, lead with authority, get better at public speaking, as well as negotiating. It all depends what you're trying to do, but it's ultimately about how to ditch that doubt and catapult your career with an incredibly supportive group of women, as well as individual coaching. If that even sounds remotely interesting, I would love to talk to you more about it and see if the Powerhouse is right for you. You can jump into the show notes and you'll see a link there where you can schedule a clarity call with me to see if it makes sense. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.